Okay, a final thing to be aware of when you are when you're working with inserts. Let's go so that we can see a bit more of the mixer window. So I'm going to reduce the size of the editing window so we can see more of this. Say we have, let's get rid of this and that. We don't need that at the moment, or the downloads window. Say we have, you've been working on a track and you have, say, 3 files worth of, also 3 tracks worth of data. Obviously, you wouldn't have this because this would be rather boring or not particularly good sounding. But you have 3 tracks worth of audio data, and you want to. At the moment, we've got reverberation applied to track 1. Now, if you wanted reverberation applied to all 3 tracks, you could do that by basically, if you press Alt, you can copy a plugin across your tracks. So you could do that. That would kind of work. It copies the automation that you've applied as well. So if I click on the next deverb along, you notice that the decay fader is still green because I chose that one before as being automatable. And any automation data that you have on the track will also be copied across. So you could do that. There are problems with that, however. One is that you are using more computer processing power with every single plugin that you apply. So if you're using 3 deverbs, that's going to be using quite a bit of CPU overhead, and that means that you will have less of that to apply to other effects. So that's one problem. The other problem is that if you wanted the same changes that you make to any particular parameters in, say, this the deverb on this track 1, I could change that. It would not change on any of the other tracks. If I go back to deverb on the 2nd track, decay is back to where it was before, whereas in the first one I've moved it. So you would have to, it would be an awfully tedious job trying to make sure that the automation information or the parameters are the same on all 3 tracks. What we really want to be able to do is to apply reverb to all of the tracks, but only once, if you like. So we have 1, which means that obviously there's going to be less processing power used, and also that whatever changes are made to the parameters on that reverberation are going to affect the output from all 3 tracks. What I could do is to move one of these deverbs onto a master channel and get rid of the other 2. Oops. So turn those off. No insert. No insert. And then that means that deverb will be applied to all 3 tracks of audio data. So that's fine. However, what happens if we only want to apply the reverberation to 2 of those tracks but not the 3rd? Then we have a problem, because at the moment all of our data is going to the master channel, which has the reverberation on it. So it's going to be applied to all 3. So what we can do is to use what's called an auxiliary channel. And that goes in as an intermediary stage between our audio tracks and our master channel. And just as with the auxiliaries on a desk, they are basically sends. They are ways of sending data out of the desk. Well, it could be permanently, but in most cases it's temporarily to an outside processing unit, and then it's returned on the return channels and then fed to the master channel. So that's basically what we're going to do in this instance. I want to make some auxiliaries, so I go to the track menu, choose new, choose a stereo auxiliary track, choose that. It's slightly awkwardly positioned here, so I'm going to move that so that it makes more sense. So it's kind of between the audio channels and the master. And I'm going to put my reverberation on that track. And then, having done that, I can then choose which of my 3 audio channels to route to that auxiliary prior to being sent to the master. And to do that, I'm going to use this lighter panel here. And this lighter panel is the sends panel. And this is basically your auxiliaries in the on the mixing desk. So if you imagine you have your you'll have your EQ, and then usually below that you'll have the auxiliary sends. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to say, click on this, and we say, I'm going to send this to a kind of, well, I'm going to send it to bus 1 and 2. And bus 1 and 2 you can think of as being kind of cables in this instance. So I'm plugging in my cable bus 1 and 2. And then I'm going to use the input of my auxiliary channel and select bus 1 and 2 from there. So what's happening is I've chosen this as an auxiliary output from my my audio track 1, and that's being sent directly to the input of my auxiliary 1 here. And I can do exactly the same for my audio track 2. I can send that to bus 1 and 2 as well. You notice that when bus 1 and 2 has got a receive, then it gets emboldened. So I click on that, and so both of these tracks now are being sent to the input of aux 1. But I've left the third one out because, as I said, it may be that track 3 I don't want to send to. I don't want to be affected by the reverb. So I only have to send tracks 1 and 2 to the auxiliary bus here, the auxiliary channel. And then obviously once the reverb has been in effect, the auxiliary automatically gets routed to the master channel. So these 2 are being sent to here and then into the master channel, whereas the audio 3 is bypassing the auxiliary channel altogether and going straight to the master. Okay, so there's a couple of other things about how you control these auxiliaries. And what you need to know is that you press, I think it's Command and click on the nodule. There you go. Once you've done that, you get a rather dinky set of volume controls pop up to control the auxiliary sends for those channels. So you notice at the moment the volume is down, so that nothing's going to be sent to the auxiliary at the moment. We need to turn that up. Quick key for that, incidentally, if you press Command and kick on, I think it's Command, no it's not, it's Alt, I beg your pardon. Yeah, okay. So if you press Alt and click on a fader, it goes to unity gain automatically. So I'll do the same with the second channel as well. So that pops to 0. You also have to control over the panning and where in the left and right space your sound is going to be when it reaches the auxiliary channel. You can mute the auxiliary channel so that it doesn't send anything. And you also have a pre and a post fader. And what that does is to determine when the signal is sent to the auxiliary channel. Okay, so at the moment it's on post. So that means that the signal will be sent through the fader at the bottom here. So the fader, whatever volume I've got this set at, will determine how much of that mix or how much of that channel is sent to the auxiliary fader. If I put it on pre by clicking on there, then it will send to the auxiliary prior to reaching this fader, which means, in fact, that we have 2 signals coming out of this track. We have one that is going to the auxiliary channel, and we have one that is coming out of the fader at the bottom of that track into the master. Okay, so I'll say that again. At the moment, if with pre-fade on, we get 2 signals, one that goes to the auxiliary channel, and then one that goes through the fader at the bottom and into the master channel. So for the moment, I'm going to turn pre-fade off because we want it to run through this in order to get to the auxiliary.